Industry structure is a critical determinant of formal and informal employment in an economy. When industries mature, employment decelerates. The growth of employment is smaller. The rate of growth of employment in mature industries is lower than the rate of growth of employment in young industries. So, employment decelerates. And competitive conditions as industry maturity lead to job losses. And the need to renew skill sets, that also leads to job losses. On the other hand, as new technologies emerge, new business opportunities arise. These new businesses disrupt or replace established industries and they employ new generation of workers. So, developments in technology and business influence recession and prosperity cycles in the economy. It is very important to realize this. Developments in technology and business influence recession and prosperity cycles in the economy. So, to connect all this, entrepreneurship, both rural and urban, is the answer, because that's the viable strategy to formalize an economy. There was a time when you would pay cash to get coconut water, but today you do that through Paytm wallet. So, it may not be a formal economy operating in the coconut water vending situation, but the vendor of coconuts is exposed to fintech, and that provides the wherewithal to earn more money more flexibly and also probably undertake certain instruments of saving and reinvestment in his or her own business. So, formality brings technology to the doorsteps of the informal sector, and without doubt it helps the formal sector to renew itself through new technologies, whether it could be electric vehicles, it could be cloud based internet of things or artificial intelligence and things like that. So, without doubt industrial structure is benefited by entrepreneurship, but in informal sector, the rural sector, self-employed sector also gets benefited by formality. In this, as I said earlier, the opportunity entrepreneur versus the forced entrepreneur. The occupational choice theory in economy says that every individual has two options: be a paid employee or become an entrepreneur. This choice is available for everybody, and a person makes an economic choice based on what he thinks are the real earnings over a life cycle he or she sees of entrepreneurial activity versus employment activity. While it is seen as a social phenomenon of getting into a job or not getting into a job, there is also an undercurrent of economics that operates in the social system that prompts this kind of decision. If an entrepreneur leaves the job market, chooses not to be an employee, he creates a new job market around the entrepreneurial firm. This is an important concept. If a person opts not to be a paid employee and opts not to be unemployed and instead creates an entrepreneurial enterprise, he creates a job market. So, if the overall job markets can be seen to be a huge bubble, hopefully a bubble which does not blow up, a bubble, then many small bubbles of entrepreneurial activity coalesce into even a larger bubble of employment. That is the magic of entrepreneurial employment. So, two theories dominate the nature of labor market: one, prosperity pull, and secondary, recessional push. These two together influence the levels of economic activity. If you have decreasing levels of employment or increasing rates of unemployment, it pushes people willy-nilly into entrepreneurship and mostly self-entrepreneurship. On the other hand, attractive and potentially profitable business opportunities, they attract people into entrepreneurship, and they also need to be competitive to be sustainable. The recessionary push theory appears well supported, especially in the nature of self-employment, and both the theories, recessional push as well as prosperity pull, have collaborative influence over each other. There has been research by this researcher based on US data about the relationship between entrepreneurship, growth, employment on one hand, and entrepreneurship, growth and unemployment on the other. Some conclusions which are applicable in respect of certain sectors in each case as further detailed are as below. The paper reference is cited below and you are encouraged to go through that at your convenience. So, there are the three fundamental areas of inquiry here. One, what is the relationship between entrepreneurship and growth? And the overall conclusion, which is also intuitive, that entrepreneurship and growth have a dynamic relationship in which one generates the other. The second hypothesis proven is unemployment spurs entrepreneurship, but entrepreneurship, more importantly, dampens unemployment. You are forced to become an entrepreneur when unemployment exists, but entrepreneurship, which is based on attraction of entrepreneurship, dampens unemployment. And the third hypothesis validated is growth dampens unemployment, but unemployment spurs growth. So, it is the question of the theories which we spoke about earlier, recession push, prosperity pull, and these have been researched to get certain Granger causal effect. Granger causal effect is the use of one time series data to predict the likelihood of the other time series data behaving in a particular fashion. So, with reference to the first hypothesis, past entrepreneurship has a positive Granger causal effect on growth. It also has got a past growth also has a positive Granger causal relationship on entrepreneurship. That is, either way, entrepreneurship influencing positively growth and growth positively influencing entrepreneurship is established. Second, we talked about unemployment spurring entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship dampening unemployment. The validation of this comes through two parts. One, past unemployment has a positive effect on entrepreneurship. Past entrepreneurship has a negative impact on entrepreneurship. The third one, growth dampens unemployment, but unemployment spurs growth. Past growth has a negative Granger causal effect on unemployment, and past unemployment has a positive Granger causal effect on growth. So, this is also proven. Students of economics know that Schumpeter has been a phenomenal economist who spoke about entrepreneurship and business cycles. In the 20th century, to be exact, 1934, he argued that entrepreneurs created technical and financial innovations in the face of competition and falling profits. By developing new and better goods, entrepreneurs often destroyed the market for older and established goods, thus creating irregular spurts of economic activity, which he termed as creative destruction. We spoke about Professor Christensen talking about disruptive technological innovation. It has its origins way back from 1934 when Joseph Schumpeter proposed this theory of economy, the theory of creative destruction in the economy. And he also viewed this as the main reason for business cycles. Technical and financial innovations come up at a fast clip, they result in newer and better goods, and they lead to creative destruction of markets. Therefore, there is business entry, there is also business exit, and these together constitute the business cycles. Another researchers saw entrepreneurs as individuals who appropriate value by taking advantage of opportunities for creating new products, thus creating disequilibria in the industrial structure. This graphic gives you the determinants, performance indicators, and the ultimate impact on the economy of the entrepreneurial activity. At an individual level, we have a mix of personality based and attribute based factors. At a contextual level, we have got several factors relating to social capital, political risk, governance parameters, access to credit, etc. And together these lead to performance indicators, entrepreneurial performance index, entrepreneurial potential index, proportion of established businesses, the churn index, early survival index. All of these indicators determine the level of entrepreneurship, the level of stability, the level of maturity of an industry in an economy, and what are the impacts in terms of visible impact as well as invisible impact, or tangible impact and intangible effect. Tangible impact occurs through job creation, economic growth, poverty reduction, income distribution, increase in formal sector. whereas intangible benefits are in terms of social equality and equity, citizen empowerment and security stability. So, this is the overall model of how different value sets, different attitude sets, different attribute sets and different policy sets of a nation lead to certain entrepreneurial performance, industrial performance indicators and together have an impact in terms of socio-economic equity of a nation. We spoke earlier about business cycles. Let's delve a little deeper into business cycles. So, at the top you have depression and at the bottom you have recovery. Business cycle is going through depression in demand and supply and recovering after a few years through entrepreneurship and increased employment. So, when you have depression, labor market gets affected, leads to dismissal of employees, but that leads to activity of proper entrepreneurs. So, there is a kind of entrepreneurial element that comes up because the industry has shed some jobs. From the labor market who have become unemployed, they become self-employed, and proper entrepreneurs who are creating jobs, creating enterprises, they become self-employed because they are also shedding jobs. So, there is a kind of churn that takes place in the industrial structure and the labor market. And when that happens, when self-employment happens or proper entrepreneurship happens through industrial restructuring, again the process of hiring people, inflows into labor market, they take place and the market becomes virtuous again. Then the recovery takes place, increase of proper entrepreneurship takes place, decrease of self-employment takes place. So, this cycle which goes around is a cycle of depression and recovery happening with certain periodicity over the business evolution of an industry or industrial evolution of an economy. This is another interesting graphic which talks about formal informal employment, where formal employment occurs better and where informal employment occurs better. So, we will just park it as a conceptual framework to look at formal and informal employment. The topic which we can look at is employee entrepreneurship. What is employee entrepreneurship? Employee entrepreneurship is one in which an employee pursues entrepreneurial opportunities with the support of the company in which he or she is employed, so that the entrepreneurial idea can be converted into a product or service and benefit the company. Usually, entrepreneurial employees are not quiet employees. They would like to be creative and they would like to work on their products. There could be two ways companies can handle this. One, to say that no, you cannot do anything other than doing the job that has been assigned for today's requirement. The second option is to let the creative energy flow in the company and see how to handle the creative energy through appropriate entrepreneurship. Employee entrepreneurship is an excellent way to handle the creative energy that exists in the employee minds and which probably cannot be harnessed immediately. So, to illustrate this, we have an example from an employee in the commercial vehicle industry, let us say from the R&D division. He or she has an idea based on his knowledge and experience, saying that I have an ultrasonic sensor which will be very useful in autonomous driving or monitoring of the condition of the vehicle. That is the product. Now, that product is related to the company's business in one sense. So, it could be part of normal employment. But imagine a situation, he has developed an ultrasonic sensor which has got more digital capability, more sensitive ability to understand the autonomous driving capability. Then that product becomes useful for the autonomous car revolution. The truck manufacturer may consider that as a strategic adjunct, in which case that becomes useful not immediately but several years later in a long term horizon. The third aspect is that this ultrasonic sensor could be completely unrelated to the automobile industry, but could be useful for oil and gas energy industry, and it could lead to several predictions of the thermal variations in the oil refinery business, in the plant maintenance and management of repairs in the complex oil refineries. Therefore, it is not related to these two industries, two industry verticals of the automobile industry, but it is related to the entirely unrelated oil and gas industry. So, in this case, when the option is number 1, then it becomes part of normal employment. There is no misalignment between employees' creativity, the resultant product and the company's line of activity. On the other hand, if the product that is discovered and worked on by the employee is related to the long-term business of the company, not immediately, the company may choose to spin out the employee as the startup so that he or she could work for the company as an entrepreneur at a later date, and that kind of spin out would be supported by the company. When the discovery and development is completely unrelated to the company's business, it could be spun out as an employee startup for the industry as a whole, and the company may support or may not support. So, there could be 3 types of employee entrepreneurship that could happen, and that is a mutually beneficial approach for the company to nurture creativity and support value optimization. Progressive companies are willing to invest in creative, entrepreneurially oriented employees who could discover, develop products not only the current line of business, but also future lines of business as well as for other industries. There are of course opportunities and challenges in employee entrepreneurship, because such employee entrepreneurship can be pursued only when the firm blesses it and when it can take place with the support of the company. For the entrepreneurship to succeed, for employee entrepreneurship or any other entrepreneurship, 3 things are vital. 1, product idea. 2nd, developmental resources, which includes finance, infrastructure, development laboratories, manufacturing laboratories, testing methodologies, and 3rd, market opportunity. So, from the point of view of firm, obviously there is a firm specificity of knowledge. When an employee discovers something, it is not that he has discovered it in a vacuum. He has discovered it because the firm provided a particular technical ambience which helped the person discover the product, develop the product. He or she has also used the firm's facilities and resources, therefore, there has been a complementarity of the firm's facilities and resources. And thirdly, from the firm's point of view, while these two have been used, the firm may not have any immediate use for the product, and there is an uncertain future in the firm's mind about the product. Therefore, the firm is willing to consider employee entrepreneurship for such a product, even though firm's resources have been used, even though firm's complementarities have been used. From the employee point of view, it is the employee centric thinking, the knowledge that has been used to develop the product. If the employee were not there, the firm would not have had this idea. So, while firm's resources have helped the employee to discover and develop the idea further, but the employee himself or herself is the key to development of this idea. Second, the employee takes risks when he spins out as an employee entrepreneurial firm. There is a risk taken by the employee to develop the idea independently, even when company provides certain grant or certain financial support. And from the attractiveness point of view, the relevance of this idea for rival and other firms is another determinant of why and how the employee chooses employee entrepreneurship as an option. Obviously, the sponsoring company should have certain rights over the employee spin out, even as the spin out is based on the employee's expertise and knowledge initiative, and even though the employee clearly takes certain risks in pursuing the path of employee entrepreneurship, because the first 2 factors which I have discussed, which is the firm specificity of knowledge and firm complementarity of resources, these 2 have been great enablers. Therefore, the firm is entitled to seek certain rights, and an employee is also entitled to seek a greater share of rights, because the idea is his and the risk is his, and the opportunity that would come about is much larger, where the company has no locus standi, but his idea has a locus standi. So, these are the fine balance parameters in discussing and finalizing an employee entrepreneurship proposal. Employee spin out generally creates greater employment with greater security than and a completely independent entrepreneurship would provide. And as I said earlier, employee entrepreneurship can succeed, can flourish only when the company has a policy that expressly provides for it. So, as an employee at the bottom of the period, there is no additional employment that gets generated if the product remains within the employee and within the company, and those ideas may or may not trigger new businesses. So, it is almost like business as is, nothing new. When you spin it out as a high interest, high exclusivity product entrepreneurially developed outside the company, it creates moderate additional employment because of the spin out, and there could be employment multiplier effect surely, but in single digits. On the other hand, when a high interest product which is of generic use to the industry is spun out and with non-exclusivity to the company, we will have high additional employment due to such spin out, and the employment multiplier effect could be in high teens. Theoretically and even practically, the more industry verticals that exist in economy and the more manufacturing or product verticals that exist in a particular firm, there would be greater scope for employee entrepreneurship. So, an industry like automobile industry, which is at one level monolithic, but at another level high, kind of dispersed in terms of the product characteristics, two-wheelers, three-wheelers, trucks, buses, light commercial vehicles, heavy commercial vehicles, defense vehicles, special application vehicles, earth-moving equipment. When industry verticals are many, the potential for employee entrepreneurship to work in these three phases of development, that is normal immediate transaction development as an employee, high interest spin out for the company in the long term, and spin out of high interest for the entire industry or broad groups of industries, and with more attractive opportunities and with non-exclusive to any industry, that provides different level of employment and economic development. While the employment generation out of entrepreneurial activity is very well established, we also have severe limitations of data in understanding the employment potential of entrepreneurship. Part of the reason is due to the churn that takes place in the entrepreneurial space, the relative rates of success and failure. So, what we collect as the initial set of data need not necessarily be the final set of data a couple of years later with reference to that enterprise. So, what I have tried to do is to simulate the employment potential of entrepreneurship, throw some kind of pointers as to what entrepreneurship would hold for the country by looking at the data set which is available with reference to traditional micro, small and medium enterprise sector, MSME sector, because I think that this serves as a good proxy. The traditional MSMEs are similar in initial funding and investment levels to new age entrepreneur and startup firms in the initial stage, a few lakhs of rupees, 1 or 2 crores of rupees after a couple of years. But the big difference occurs in the next stage. New age firms are characterized by a boom or bust mindset, whereas traditional MSMEs would like to stay on and move on for the long haul. Even when the pressure is there in terms of lack of business success on a relative basis, MSME sector tends to stay on in business. They last through business cycles, they absorb losses, they hold on to whatever they have and see how far they can grow and go with the MSME infrastructure they have developed. And they are also supported by the policy framework that provides concessional credit, is more tolerant of the MSME sector performance or non-performance, and also is willing to provide certain procurement dispensation benefits and other benefits to the MSME sector, which we have considered in one of the earliest modules we went through. In terms of employment potential, the new age firms have the ability and potential to disrupt not only the large industries but even the MSME sector. That is both the good news and the bad news. The real success for India's employment policy would occur when MSME firms simulate and emulate the scalability approaches of the new age entrepreneurial firms. And the new age entrepreneurial firms adapt the sustainability and longevity approaches of the MSMEs, then it could be a win-win for the economy and for the overall entrepreneurship model in terms of scalable and sustainable entrepreneurship in the country.